Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first mortgage playbook of 2024. Today's focus is on the state of the housing market. I'm Allie Wolf, the chief economist with Zonda, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Nicollette Chapman, our senior vice president of mortgage. Today's webinar is sponsored by Mortgage Pro. As you'll hear later in the presentation, the new home market is an increasingly important part of the housing landscape. Mortgage Pro was designed to help you secure more builder business by quickly identifying opportunities to develop new builder relationships and increase market share. We are meeting the day after the announcement that Zonda and BDX have joined forces. Zonda is streamlining the new home shopping journey by combining its data and technology with the leading new home listing portal in the US. If you haven't visited it before, check out newhomesource.com. This listings website can show you where new homes are being built, how much they are selling for, and which builders have standing inventory to purchase today. Newhomesource.com lets you look at the housing market on a community-by-community basis. We also take our proprietary data and roll up stats on a metro level to provide our clients with market snapshots for 70 metros across the country. You can get your free local report today at zondahome.com/market-snapshot. Beyond our data, our team provides analysis. And that's why I am so excited to launch our National Outlook report next week. This national report looks at anything and everything related to the economy, housing market, consumers, demographics, policy, and more. We will deliver a force ranking of the top 100 markets across the country. We'll provide special research projects and have exclusive events for our clients. Be sure to fill out our exit survey following today's presentation to learn more. Now with that, let's get to our agenda. I'm going to spend the first 15 minutes today going through a state of the market presentation before passing it to Nicollette. Nick will break down the so what of today's market for those in the mortgage space. Let's dive in. Now, where I want to start is with the new data that we got today on existing home sales. And that carried on the story that we knew, that the existing home market continues to be crippled. It's held back by what we're seeing with affordability, with what we're seeing with consumer confidence, and of course, inventory. We'll talk about inventory a little bit more, but the latest data shows us that we are still down year over year. We're down 26% compared to 2019. I guess the silver lining in that report was that we were at this 5-month high. But beyond looking at the total sales levels, what I think is also valuable is looking at how quickly homes are selling. This is showing you homes that are off the market in 2 weeks, comparing out 2021, 22, 23, and 24. What I think is noteworthy is if you look at the yellow line for 2024, yes, we're off the absolute highs of the market, but we still have about 45% of all listings that are selling within 2 weeks. What this is telling me is the backdrop to existing home sales and the fact that we are still so much lower in transaction volume than 2019. This is not just a demand issue. We know that demand is impacted by mortgage rates and home prices, but we also know that what's happening right now is not just limited inventory, but this mismatch between what people are willing and able to spend on homes and the homes that are available. So let's look at listings. Here you're tracking it out by month, by year, and I'm going to drop in a green line, which is going to show where we've started this year. So you can see it's over there by January, February, look up 4 lines. For January, we have the highest inventory of a January dating back to 2020, which sounds really good until you put it in context. Active listings today still down 40% compared to pre-pandemic times. Now, we understand why. I think this group, more than most audiences, understand that lock-in effect, understand how many people are reluctant to reset their interest rate. But I think it's fascinating seeing how much regional variety there is here. If you're operating in Utah, Colorado, or California, you are operating in some of the states where the lock-in effect is most severe. 70% of people have a rate below 4%. That's very different than somewhere like Texas or Florida, two big production markets where we're looking at 55% of people locked in below 4. Now, Zonda's belief is that by the end of this year, mortgage rates are more likely to be down than up. And we think any kind of compression in mortgage rates does help increase mobility. But I want to put that mobility in context. So we think that over time, the math may not make sense last October when interest rates were 8%, but maybe for some people, the math to move combined with a lifestyle change makes sense at 6.5, makes sense at 6. But let's say we start to see more mobility, we start to see more listings on the market. I'm going to show you a series of pink dotted lines that show you the hypothetical. Let's say that from today, inventory levels go up 10%. This dotted line shows you where we are. What if inventory levels go up 20%? What if they go up 30%? What if they go up 40%? It would take a 40% rise to get us back to where we were going into the pandemic. 50% basically gets you back to where we were in 2018. So to me, I look at this and you say, wow, there's got to be something big, a really massive shift to see a normal level of inventory return to the market. Which is why, if you've looked at how the housing market has played out, there have been a very clear divide between what's happened in the existing home space and the new home space. The new home market has been a dominant player. We anticipate it continuing to have that higher market share throughout this year. This is showing you new home share of total inventory. Nationally, we're used to 10 to 15%. The most recent data, we're still at 30%. And what this has resulted in is a very different market. So last year, full year for existing home sales, we were at the lowest level since 1995. When you look at new home sales, we were up 12% compared to 2022. Two very different paths. Now, if you look at where we started this year, we just released new data this morning. You can find it on Builder Online or on Zonda Homes website about the state of the market for January. Here you can find it as that purple line. What you're seeing is we started the year better than 2023, not a blockbuster start to the year, but also seeing some positive momentum. If you look at this idea of two different housing markets, though, you have to ask yourself, well, what's the big difference between new and existing homes? Well, one is what we hit on that graph in the bottom left, inventory. The fact that builders have homes that are available and many builders are willing and able to offer incentives. We'll talk about those incentives a little bit more in a couple slides. But let's go back to January, how we've started the year so far. We take our sales data at Zonda and we have a methodology where we quantitatively, has nothing to do with our opinion, we figure out where a market is, and on our ZMR, our Zonda market ranking. Nationally, the market came in as average for January. Any of the markets that are yellow here will be average, so right in line with that national figure. Any of the markets that are green are among the 46% that are overperforming. Now, if you're operating in one of these markets that are green and you say, wow, the market doesn't feel like it's overperforming, feels like every transaction, every sale is taking a lot of work, know that the ZMR doesn't care how much work it takes to sell a home. It doesn't care what it takes financially to sell a home. We just care that a sale has been secured. And what we know from talking to builders is that the consumer backdrop is challenging. Interest rates back in the 7s, seeing that return of volatility. Consumers that are shopping today oftentimes are need-based, but also looking for the best deal that's available. This goes back to why the new home is gaining share. What builders have proven that they're willing and able to do is work with the customers. About 60% of all new home communities right now are offering incentives. And those incentives range on the low end, 30% in New York. So 30% of all projects in New York offering incentives. up to 90% in Denver. These are important because they help address the two main issues in today's market. There's fear of buying today, and some of those fears can be calmed if you think you're at least getting a deal, getting a discount. But incentives also target the core issue of today's market, which is affordability. When we talk to builders about the incentives that they most commonly used, it's mortgage rate buydowns, funds towards closing cost, and flex dollars. But here, I'm showing you the distribution of the 30-year fixed rate mortgage that builders say they're willing and able to offer. If you notice, I included October of last year when interest rates were at 8s, because it shows as interest rates go up, builders can still buy down the rate. But last October, you saw the rates were really high 5s, low 6s. Today, as we track it out, look at the purple lines on this chart. You see that the range is between the high 4s to high 5s. So consumers that are buying from a builder that offers an incentive can save hundreds of dollars a month, and that has helped support some of that outperformance. Now, what we need to break down a little bit further, though, is this idea that the housing market will vary depending on geography. You saw some markets underperforming, some markets overperforming. But the relative strength and weakness will also depend on the buyer group. So I'm going to show you 3 slides. The first one looking at the entry-level market, then the move-up market, then the high-end market. So here, you're looking at the average sales rate per month per community at new home building sites. The black dotted line is telling you the national average. This is how many homes are builders selling per month on average. Now, what you'll notice, and where my eyes go here, Tampa, Charlotte, Raleigh, the 3 over to the left, those markets are not only outperforming the national average, but pretty dramatically outperforming their own history as well, their comparison to pre-pandemic. But when you look at this, those markets are really outperforming, but a bit of an anomaly. Because of the 3 price points, entry level, move up, and luxury, entry level is actually performing the worst today. We have 40% of the top markets across the country where entry level sales are outpacing pre-pandemic. So that's still good. You still have 40%, but as I show you the other categories, that's the lowest of the bunch. And to me, as you start to think about it, you say, okay, well, entry level has the highest buyer pool. I think there's the most people that can qualify, lots of different characteristics and types of buyers that can be in that entry level. But for people buying solely off of income, it's gotten a lot harder to make the market work in the face of home price appreciation and higher interest rates. It's not only that it's harder to maybe qualify, but people have this debate. Do I want to rent? Do I want to own? And this is showing you the rent versus own going back to 2010. When the purple is above the blue, owning is more expensive. When the blue is above the purple, renting is more expensive. And you can see there's been pockets of both where owning's more expensive, renting's more expensive. But if we show the most recent data, massive shift. So right now, if someone is solely looking at the monthly payment on a national level, and they are not looking at the other values, the other benefits of homeownership, a lot of people are saying, you know what, it makes sense for me to continue to rent. In fact, if you look at Equity Residential, they're one of the apartment REITs. What they shared is right now they have the lowest percent of people that are moving out to buy a home since they started tracking the data. So this all starts to support that maybe the entry level, huge demand, huge opportunity, but a lot of buyers that are a little bit more constricted on affordability. Let's now look at move up. Same story, dotted line is looking at your national average. If you're like me, your eyes went to 2 markets. First, still Tampa, seeing that outperformance in the move up category. Phoenix, seeing some of that relative underperformance compared to itself, still above the national average, not as strong as what we had seen in 2019. But now as we look at the move up market, we have 65% of the top markets that are outpacing their pre-pandemic level. And what I think is interesting about this is if you would to just think high level about the market, you'd say, oh, move up's where it's getting hit. No one wants to resell. No one wants to move up and get rid of their interest rate. And yet we are seeing some of this outperformance. And I think this is due to a couple big things. The first is if you think about the move up pool, that's going to be a lot of Gen Xers and that's going to be a lot of millennials. People that have maybe lived in their entry level home for a while, the home no longer fits their needs, and they've seen equity gains over time. This is showing you the average equity by borrower by state. Again, where do your eyes go? Probably to the bright orange. So you see huge, almost $650,000 as the average equity per homeowner in California, Washington State, high up there as well. But I also want to draw your eyes to where we're seeing some of the migration hotspots. You can see the Southwest, the Mountain West, Florida, big numbers here. The increase in equity is sometimes challenging if you're trying to move up within the exact same area, because obviously everything else has gotten more expensive. But we found that if people are willing to move markets or move locations, they can tap that equity and be able to offset some of the higher interest rates because of the equity that they have access to. Beyond that, though, let's go to the high end, where again, dotted line is national average. What you may have noticed is you still have the highest sales rate for entry level, second highest move up, third highest high end. That's what you would normally see. Bigger buyer pool, it's kind of like a funnel. But as we look at this, same story. 65% of the top markets today have those high end sales that are outperforming that pre-pandemic. When you look at this list, you can see it's now kind of a mix of geography. You do have the Southeast, but you also have LA, you have Denver, you have the Midwest, Indianapolis and Chicago, where you're seeing a lot of this outperformance. I want you to think about Indianapolis and Chicago for a second. We just did a presentation on the Midwest markets, and one of the benefits to somewhere like Indianapolis and Chicago is that their high end, the top third of their market, is equivalent to a lot of the coasts bottom end. And so if people have moved in, they've said, oh, there's actually relative value here. That's helped support growth across different home prices. So I think relative affordability has benefited some of the high-end markets, but also the idea of wealth accumulation. We talked about what we've seen with home equity and how that's evolved, especially for those that already own homes. But also think about the S&P 500. Last year alone, up 25%. That's helped some groups with their overall wealth backdrop. And no group has that impacted more the boomers. They're the second largest living generation, number one for the largest holders of wealth. And this has contributed to changing the dynamics in the housing market. Millennials were the number one most active buyer from 2014 up until 2022. They lost share in 23. Boomers gained share. So boomers number one, millennials two, Gen X number three. To me, that gaining share comes down to who has less sensitivity to what has happened to home prices and interest rates, who has access to wealth and equity, and who has a life stage change. Every boomer can be retiring or will be of retirement age by 2030. That's playing into that as well. So we look at this. We know that the market has changed. We know that all things considered, new is outperforming the resale side. But what we also know, and what I don't want to discount, is that we just came from, objectively, the lowest year for mobility on record. So yes, there have been transactions. There were, those were deals to be had, in my opinion, but we were dealing with the backdrop of very limited mobility, very limited transactions. As we think forward, though, we don't even want to take our opinion into this. We want to hear from consumers. And what we know is that in 2023 and in 2022, we had a higher than normal percent of people that are living in their home that feel stuck but want to move over the next 2 years. To me, this is a huge opportunity as we see the market start to stabilize, start to normalize. My advice here is we know that there'll still be transactions today. It's finding the pockets of success right now, but also start planting those seeds, because to me, there's a lot of people that are telling us that they want to move once they get to a place that they feel comfortable with their finances, feel comfortable with the market, or are pushed to move because of life stage and lifestyle reasons. Now with that, I'd like to turn things over to Nicollette Chapman, our Senior Vice President of Mortgage. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing Nicollette often, and I think one of the things I often talk about is how she loves to travel around the world for fun. But another big thing with Nicollette is she travels around the country for work. And I know from LinkedIn and from talking to Nicollette, she's always in these different cities, meeting with loan officers, meeting with banks on the ground. But in particular, I am looking forward to seeing her next week in IBS. I know that Nicollette has a jam-packed schedule. Nicollette, I hope we can squeeze in some time for quick hellos, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you hear on the ground from your clients as you spend the week in Las Vegas. Let me turn it to you.
Thank you so much, Allie. Such great information as usual. And yes, it'll be really great to be able to spend some time with you in Vegas, and always love hearing you speak. So if any of you who are on the call are going to be in Vegas for IBS next week, please do reach out. I'd love to connect, and of course, stop by our booth. We'd love to be able to see you and learn more about how we can help you with your business. So I wanted to take some time just to sort of go into some of the slides and details of what Allie talked about, and discuss how to sort of apply strategies in today's market in order to help you drive business. So number one, I think the bottom line thing is that we have to realize that mortgage companies and originators need a builder strategy if you want to survive. That's just the reality of the marketplace that we are in. Now, obviously, lock-in effect is still well and alive. We also know that anywhere from 30 to 35% of all inventory on the market is new construction. And so given the total market environment, it's important to understand that we have to sort of shift and make sure that we are giving resources to the new build community. Now, I want to point out additional data on this, and that is the purchase application index. So it is not business as usual. We can see that the numbers look pretty tragic. We've got the purchase application index down. We've got the mortgage refi data down in terms of applications. But the bright spot here is in new construction. So according to MBA, new home applications are actually up 22.2%. So in an otherwise dismal application world, this is the bright spot. If you want to do loans, you got to find where to do them. And that is in the new home construction market. As Allie mentioned, there's so much opportunity to be able to leverage builder incentives and buy downs in order to make ownership a reality for those entry level and even move up buyers. I wanted to share this slide with you, which was also shared in our Austin frame market by Brian Glasshagel last week. And this is a really good example of just how significant new home construction is in our markets across the country. This is actually in Austin, Texas. New homes actually were representative of 41% of all closings in 2023. 41%. That is staggering. Again, I would hate to be a loan officer in Austin and not have any builder relationships, because you are competing for only 59% of the entire addressable purchase market, if that's the case. So again, it's never too late to pivot. Please reach out if that's something that we can help you with. Now, I want to talk about specific strategies. Allie mentioned move-up buyers, and they are a key piece of how we are looking at growing business in the purchase arena. So one of the things that you need to be able to understand is that equity is there for existing homeowners. And actually, to reference this CoreLogic report that Allie mentioned in the map to the right, nationally, the average mortgage holder has $300,000 in equity. That means you can tap into that. Now, she also mentioned in the last slide that there are a lot of buyers that are having sort of regret about the house that they felt forced into buying when rates were low and there was that frenzy that was happening. And so what we're seeing is help these buyers leverage the equity that they have. And that will sort of help them understand that, hey, you can actually keep the house that you have that's free money at 2%, at 3%, but let's tap into that equity, and you can rent out that house, use the profits on that rent in order to help subsidize the higher mortgage payment costs on the house that you really want to live in. So again, really understand what are your HELOC options, what are your cash out options, and then really work to educate the consumer on how the move up buyer can leverage those assets in order to get into a new home. I also want to talk about renter strategy. Really amazing numbers that Allie shared with us in terms of the rent versus own debate, and that less than 8% of residents who moved out gave buying a home as a reason to depart in 2023. I think it's really important that we're reaching out and educating buyers on the fact that, yes, it might be, more expensive to have a mortgage payment right now than it is to rent. But if you're renting, you're missing out on that $300,000 average equity that exists if you buy a home. So it's more than just that monthly payment. And that's our job as originators in the industry, is to be able to say, listen, let's break this down and talk about why homeownership is different. Not to mention that we know that as soon as rates do drop, it's going to send a feeding frenzy of buyers into the marketplace, which will obviously elevate home prices and cause multiple bidding wars again. But also it's important to know, what are your affordability solutions? What are the things that you offer for that first home buyer? Do you offer a 3.5% forgivable down payment? What bond options do you have for that FHA buyer? Really dig into those solutions, non-QM products as well, in order to help bring renters into the marketplace. And then thirdly, I want to talk about baby boomer strategy, which I think is important for a lot of reasons. And certainly it was surprising to me to see that this massive shift in demographics for buyers. So we can see 39% of all of our buyers right now are those baby boomers, and some of them are baby chasers, as Ali has talked about, which grandparents sort of chasing where they can spend time with their grandbabies and their children, obviously, as well. Hopefully they still like them. But we want to make sure that we do meet the needs of those baby boomers. So what is your reverse mortgage for purchase program? And then how are you communicating those to your home builders? I think there's a lot of opportunity. If you use Zonda, you can certainly search for people who have had cash transactions in age-restricted communities. That's a great lead source to be able to go and market reverse for purchase candidates as well. So I want to sort of cap this up here to remind you that there is business that is out there if you do the work. There were more than 22,000 builders who closed homes in the last year. And certainly there's so much opportunity to be able to work with lenders. So I always want to end with saying, I know top of mind, we're thinking the big national builders, but there are a lot of local and regional builders that are out there that need great lenders in order to help them maximize the incentives that they are offering. So if you need help sort of discovering those, please do reach out. We are here to help you. Again, if you're going to be at IBS, please do visit us at our booth. Of course, follow us online. My name is Nicollette Chapman. Of course, we've got Ali Wolf, our Chief Economist Extraordinaire. And of course, subscribe to our emails. Again, you'll see a quick survey at the end of this webinar. Please do take a few moments just to give us your feedback. And of course, if you'd like additional information, please indicate so there. Thanks, everyone, and let's make it a great week.